I'm Father Roderick, and it is time to give you my first spoiler-free impressions of the movie Avengers Endgame. I just came back from the first screening this morning. There was one previous screening in the middle of the night, but you had to work your way through the first Avengers Infinity Wars movie, and then until I think 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you got to see the premiere. I went this morning at 10 o'clock, and there was a huge crowd in the movies. Normally, there's not a big crowd. Usually, I'm just one of the few people that watch this movie in the middle of the morning. And of course, the first thing you want to know is, was it what you expected it to be? Yes, it was so incredibly good. This was way better than I thought they could pull off. One of the big questions that I had after Infinity War was, how do you follow up on such an emotional high note? It was one of the most shocking movies that I've seen in my life. That ending, and how do you pick things up? How do you move forward? And it was not just plot-wise. So how are they going to resolve this? How can they continue the story? But more, what are they going to do with my feelings? Because I was already so emotional after seeing Infinity War that I was afraid that, it wouldn't have that same emotional impact. How could it? Well, let me reassure you, this movie has a even more emotional impact on me. And I'm glad to say that it also greatly impacts the way this movie was made. This is the conclusion of 10 years of storytelling. 21 movies came before this one, plus the TV series, plus all the stories that surround this core quest of our heroes. We've gotten to know, from Iron Man to Captain America and Black Widow and Spider-Man, and everyone was part of this story, and we got to love all these different characters. And I remember seeing the first Iron Man movie, and I was like, what is this? I didn't even really like it that much. And then I watched it a second time, and I was like, I'm starting to really get this. And then same thing happened with me with Captain America. At first, I was like, I don't know what to think about this character. And then he starts to grow on you because all these characters are somehow interconnected and they influence each other's stories. You see their friendship grow. You see also the conflicts in those friendships. And over those years, they feel like family. And in that respect, it is very much what happened also in another part of my reality with Star Wars. You get to know these friends. All the main characters become part of your movie family, and the more you love them, the more what happens to them will impact you. And that is why Infinity Wars had so much of an emotional shock. Was so much of an emotional shock. I remember leaving the cinema. I think I took a selfie, and I was literally and it only took 3 or 4 seconds for me to be back at that feeling that I had when I walked out of the movie theater after having first seen Infinity War. And then this movie just grabs me in that emotional core and gives it all the time it needs. That is one of the most awesome accomplishments of this movie, is that this could have been a rush job. This could have been like one of these movies we got to cram everyone in. And this is one of the biggest casts we've ever seen. I mean, you thought that the final movies of Harry Potter were big in terms of characters that you've gotten to know. This is like times 10, times 100. And so you'd think that not only is it almost impossible to put everyone in this final conclusion of this part of the saga, but then you also have to wrap up all the plot lines, all the different elements. And my big question was, how are they going to do that? I had no idea how this was going to end. I didn't read any of the spoilers, of course. I didn't want to hear anything about even speculation. I avoided. But I was sitting there and I was waiting to be surprised. You know what made this movie so cool? It was also the fans around me. Like, there was this girl sitting on my left, and the finally, after you do a lot of waiting, and then the last trailer for whatever movie I don't care about was over, and then the screen goes dark. You get the final message: please turn off your phone, and then you hear the first notes. And she was sitting like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and she was like crawling up on the seat. And on my right, too, there was a lot of excitement. And that, just the hearing and feeling the emotional reaction of the people around me made me emotional. My heart started pumping, and I was like, what are they going to do? And I was actually, it's almost as if you're in, like, at the start of the race of your life. Like, you've been training for years and years and years, and now, it's now or never. And so you have all this adrenaline in your body, and you're ready to race, to run. And then the movie is just, hold on, take it easy. You're here now. Let us bring you in. And so this movie had such a different pace from what I expected, but in a very, very good way. This movie would probably not have worked at all had it been a standalone movie. In terms of pacing, storytelling, visual style, just the overall, let's say, build up. This movie does everything wrong. But because it is the conclusion of 10 years of movie making, of storytelling, it is the conclusion of a family story that we've lived together with our on-screen heroes, this movie does everything right. And it has to do everything wrong to make it right. I don't know if this makes sense, but that's how I feel. It completely broke every convention. And that is what makes it so good. That is actually one of the big qualities, I think, of the Marvel movies that we've seen so far. They were always unafraid to break with conventions, to change the way they told the story, to not play the same safe cards and always give us exactly what we expected. They dare to change sometimes the entire style of the movie. Think of the movie with Rogers, with Captain America, the second or the third one. How all of a sudden that turned into this kind of this war spy story, and then they completely surprised us with Thor Ragnarok, where from this kind of brooding superhero Thor to this second movie that was one of the weakest in my opinion. They brought us this genius comedy where all of a sudden you got to love this character Thor and the people around him so much more. Then you had the huge surprise of this unimaginable success of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which again, from the first notes of that music that started playing, I was like, this is something we've never seen before in the Avengers universe. And that is how we kept watching these movies, and I kept loving them, because every movie brought something new to the table, not just plot-wise or character-wise, but in terms of the way they told stories, the way they bypassed sometimes your expectations, played with your emotions, and gave incredible payoffs. And so this movie does exactly that, but to the 10th degree. There is something in this conclusion that makes this... I love this movie 6,000 times more than any of the other previous movies. It is so incredibly gratifying. So what I really loved about this movie, and what will make, I think, that this movie is, I think, the summit of what they've done so far, is the acting. The acting is so good, and and every character, and no exceptions. You have little bit roles. Of course, they have to kind of choose who are we going to expand upon, which characters are just going to pop up and say hi, and then you have to make choices, but they make exactly the right choices, and we get to live through the events or through the emotional impact that Infinity War had on our characters, story-wise, through the eyes of the heroes that we love. And it is through empathy that you feel what they feel. And there were so many moments where these actors made me cry. I was sitting there several times crying, and I was not the only one. Normally, I'd feel incredibly embarrassed if I would, but, people around me were crying. And, there were moments in this movie where there was all this beginning, everybody's sitting down and exciting and adrenaline, and they're whispering theories, and then you got the first start of the movie and everybody's super excited, and you hear people kind of grasp their potato bag chips, and you hear the last slurp of Coca-Cola, and then there are these moments where everything gets silent. No one is saying something. There's no music. There's nothing happening on the screen, and then you hear the first, behind you, and on my right is you see people in front of you, leaning against the person next to them. I hope it wasn't a stranger, but I was like, oh my God, and I was tearing up, and that happened 3 times. I'm still, now that I'm thinking of it, I still get choked up. That's what this movie did. Now, maybe I'm just emotional like that. I don't know if it has the same effect on everyone who was going to see this movie, but definitely on the crowd that I saw this movie with, it did everything it had to do. And it was so satisfying in a way to be able, in a movie that could have been this rush job and cramming everything in, to feel respected as a viewer who has invested 10 years in these movies, having watched so many of them several times, having listened to countless podcasts, nitpicking and trying to analyze what was happening and predicting what was going to happen, after having myself recorded so many of these discussions with others or sometimes solo, to feel that the movie lets me be, without, forcing me in some kind of contrived storyline, without trying to artificially make me feel like things. Everything that happens is so natural and so, I don't know, fitting. Thomas Aquinas would say it's fitting. It's fitting that the things happened the way they happened. It's fitting that this story was told the way it was told. And then it's genius at the same time. Not only is it very well directed, very well acted, the execution is amazing. I mean, if you look at the credits, just so many people and companies were involved in this, from ILM to Weta to all the special effects people. You've got so many writers and people that brought the best to the table, but without at any moment making me feel like, oh, I'm just being pulled through this story because we need to wrap things up and we need to kind of make sure that we can get you back into the movies or anything. This movie respects the viewer, respected me, up until the last moment. And I really appreciate that. This didn't feel like a cheap cash grab or let us just, I don't know. This felt like we have the utmost respect for the people that have followed us for 10 years. We want to bring you along with our heroes. You feel part of them. You feel part of the family on screen. And what they go through, you go through, if you have a heart. And where they bring you, what I loved about the movie as well, is that it has the ingredients that make Marvel movies so good. And that is, it's got character. It's got heart. You care about these people because they care. And they're portrayed as, yes, superheroes, but at the same time, incredibly human. There's this kind of the same duality, perhaps, what you have in my Catholic world, in the Christian world, with Christ, who was both fully divine and also fully human. And he could cry. And at the same time, he was the Son of God. These heroes, these superheroes, have that same quality. They are above anything that a normal human being could achieve, could do. But at the same time, they're just like us. They cry when we would cry. They laugh when we would laugh. They crack jokes when we would try to break tension. And so they're all so relatable. And that is what makes these superheroes such good storytellers, because we only really accept emotions from people and characters that we can relate to. If they're above us or just in a totally different reality and we would never act like that, then we wouldn't be emotional. But because, like, you can imagine, what I would do the same in this situation. I would feel the same. And because there's such a wide diversity of characters that we've gotten to know and love, everyone will find their buddies in this movie, and that's also what makes Avengers. Okay. You thought I was going to cry, right? I was going to sneeze, but one of the things that I love about Avengers is that these heroes are so different from each other, and some of them go through all these changes. And may I give one example? Again, no spoilers, but one of my favorite characters, the one character that I used to hate in the first movie, and now he's my favorite, is Thor. Thor is, when the first movie is like, oh, come on, this is so over the top. He's such a, I don't know, I'm just really not my kind of superhero. At this end of the movie, I was like, oh, best superhero ever. So this movie made, okay, I was mentioning kind of what makes these Avengers movie so successful. So it's the heart. It's the heart. It's the humor. As one of the things that sets Marvel apart from so many other superhero franchises. There is really genuine funny humor also in this movie, despite the tragedy and sometimes because of the tragic circumstances. But humor as a tool to make us laugh and breathe, and then to get us ready, to give us a little, jolt of energy before plunging us again into emotion. Is that ongoing, like, ups and downs that I really appreciate of these Marvel movies. There are few movies that do that to me, especially in such a condensed time. The surprises. That is, every Marvel movie so far has surprised me, some more than others, and I definitely have my favorites, and also the movies that I've watched once and never really cared about too much. But there was always this element of surprise, up until, these credit surprises where you're watching the credits and you're like, oh, we're going to see something cool, and then the only thing we see is the whole bunch eating shawarma. It's like sitting at a fast food joint. It's like, okay, I did not see that coming. So the element of surprise is also what makes this final story so great. It is so different from what I expected. Story-wise, I couldn't come up with a story like this. Sometimes you have these, especially the super fans, they kind of can second guess what will happen. But I know that there have been so many people speculating about the events and trying to dissect all these teaser trailers and posters that we saw and little glimpses from the set, and we're trying to come up with all these theories. And sometimes that works. There are fans that are so good that they can actually really guess this is what is going to happen. Well, I'm a pretty hardcore fan, and I like speculating about movies and about stories, and but this was a story that I didn't see coming, and you had so many great ways to finalize everything. This is what I loved about this movie, and I need to start wrapping up before I start spoiling things. But this movie is the best conclusion that you can imagine. It helps you, the way they tell the story, and the story that they tell helps us to go back and relive all those highlights of the 10 years that preceded this movie. It is literally this franchise this overall saga is, for many of us, part of our lives. For 10 years, it was what we were looking forward to, what we talked about with our friends, what we relived by rewatching these movies. So it's not only that we are a part of the, let's say, the success of the franchise, but the franchise is also part of our lives. It made us laugh, it made us cry, it made us cheer, stand on our chairs, and look like idiots. um, and that is why when you're watching this finale, this conclusion, it is also as if your own life, in a certain way, at least your life of the past 10 years, comes to a certain conclusion, and is you relive all those moments that made you feel so good about these movies, and it brings back a lot of the emotions from everything that came before, and it heightens it. It brings it to the next level, and it gives such a good conclusion to the story, to the people that we cared for, that we loved. It's got heart. It's got a lot of good values and ideals. There is a lot that is healed, that is wrapped up, that is reconciled. There is also pain. There is pain. Brace yourself. There are things in this movie that are gonna make you cry, and it's gonna be a deep sadness. And the movie would not be as good if it didn't do that. If this is not a fairy tale. This is about heroes that resemble us, and so just like our lives are not superhero tales, and things happen, and tragedy as well as joy, failure as well as success. It is all part of our lives, and so it is also part of this story, and that is why you're constantly looking at a world that you can relate to and recognize. So all in all, what is my final assessment of this movie? It is something I've never seen before. We have never seen a franchise, even Harry Potter, which was such an epic conclusion and such an amazing story. Not even Star Wars, in a way. Well, it's still, waiting for us. There's something to look forward to in December. But Star Wars, there is much more space between these trilogies that we've seen. There are fewer characters that we can relate to. So it's been kind of on and off in most of our lives. And so it's much harder to get to that same emotional depth. And don't underestimate J.J. Abrams and all the other people involved. I do believe that it can surpass our imagination and our expectations. But this movie, I've never seen a conclusion of a saga, of a franchise. It's not a real conclusion, of course, but let's say what they've been trying to build over these 10 years, that is to this level. It is a perfect movie. I hardly ever say that, but this is to me is a perfect movie, not as a standalone movie, but as the conclusion of what is such an amazing franchise. So, I'm not going to say a word more than this. I've already probably said too much. But go and watch this movie. Open your heart. Enjoy this. Let it touch you. And I will guarantee you'll step out of this theater feeling transformed and thankful that we've been able to experience something like this. That's my conclusion. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your comments. And let me know what you thought. And by all means, for now, keep it spoiler-free. Also in the comments. Try to not spoil it for anyone, because this movie is best experienced with an open heart and an open mind and without much pre-knowledge. So let's keep it safe for everyone who is still going to experience this amazing movie. Take care, and talk to you guys soon.